Hey everyone, this is Mukesh Otwani once again from learn-automation.com. Today in this video we'll talk about how you can use Traceviewer in Playwright with Java. Now this is very interesting feature when it comes to debugging, because using Traceviewer you can capture a lot of details about your test. What happens when we are running our test locally, right? So let's say if I'm running my test locally, I can see what is happening, why the script is getting failed, where it is not clicking, elements are covering. I can capture a hell lot of details if I'm running locally. But what happens once your script is ready? Definitely you will be running your script on a CI server. Okay, let's assume you're running your test on Jenkins or TeamCity, Bamboo, any CI server which is on the cloud. There you cannot see the execution, right? So let's say if your script is getting failed, how you will get to know what went wrong with your test? Sometimes you can easily capture the details via exception, but what if I need the complete detail? When I say detail, I want to see what happened exactly at that step, which exception it is coming, what was the network call, what was the additional details I will get, metadata, console logs, everything you will be getting using Traceviewer. So if you're starting Playwright, please enable this feature. It's going to help you a lot because it will give you the snapshot of each step, how much time it has taken and everything. So I will show you this, just a small 2 lines of code that you need to add and we are good to go. Okay, so what exactly is Traceviewer? First of all, if you go to this official website, playwright.dev, it's a GUI tool. When I say GUI tool, once you complete the tracing part, okay, you can see the tracing. So they have already one GUI tool. I will show you both approach. One is directly there. They have given a dedicated UI where you can see all the traces, or you can run a simple Maven command, which will again bring this GUI where you can see all the trace features. So they're given, you can capture the actions, okay, before and after, what exactly happened. So before, after, screenshot for every steps. Then you can see the source. So when I say source, you can see the source code as well. And if you talk about logs, you can see the logs, errors, console logs, network calls, metadata, so many things. Only one thing you need to do is you need to start the tracing and you need to end the tracing, that's all. So I'm going to show you this. Now for this example, what I did, I already created one sample test, and this we discussed earlier. So in case if you haven't watched the previous video, I would recommend, because these things we discussed in detail, how to start the browser, how to do activities. So this is the playlist which I will be sharing. Please go through this playlist. You will get to know so many things about Playwright, how to get started, and till video recording features I've got. In the upcoming videos we'll talk about more. So now the moment you talk about how to enable the tracing, now we need a browser context. So this feature is available from a context. In my code right now, if you notice, we are directly starting a browser, then we are creating a new page, and then I'm running my steps and I'm closing the page and closing the browser. Now in order to work with tracing, you need a browser context. So a small change I will do. So once you get this browser, just use browser and use one method called new context. So this is a method which will return you the reference of browser context. Now let me store this in a browser context reference. So browser context, and let me use context here. Now use context and search for a method called tracing. Basically, in order to start a trace, we need to call a tracing method, which will return you the reference of tracing. So if you see, call this tracing and return the reference of tracing. Now once you got the tracing reference, you can see we can start and we can stop. So you can start with default options, but I would go with the second method, which is start, and we need to provide multiple tracing options. So if you see this, we need to create new tracing.start options. So I will use new and I will say tracing options. See, if you don't remember the syntax, don't worry, the moment you start writing, it gives the auto suggestions, right? So you can use that for reference. So I will say start a new tracing, and we can give stop options and start options. As of now, since we are starting the tracing, we'll say start options. And now you have to tell what kind of tracing you want. Okay. So by default, this value is false. So you can say I need the screenshots. I will make it true. I also need snapshots. So snapshots to true. And I also need the source code. So I will say set source to true. Now depends on what details you need. If you just need the screenshot, snapshot, make it true. If you don't need source, just keep it false, so you don't provide anything. Right now for demo purpose I have given everything, snapshot, screenshot and source to true. Now this will start your tracing, and make sure you start the tracing before you start the test. Okay, so before we start this page.navigate, I started the tracing, and obviously since we are using browser context, you have to use this before starting a page. So once the tracing will start, it will start capturing each and every detail. You're starting a new page, you're navigating to a URL, you're asserting the title, entering details, clicking, and again we are verifying the welcome message, clicking, again verifying, close the page and close the browser. So once you're done, before closing the page, come back to context again, set tracing, and this time you just say stop. And again we have stop options, just like we did start option, we can use stop option. Now you must be wondering, why do we need to give stop options? The moment I stop, I should get the trace, right? See, if you have to provide the path, where exactly you need the trace? Do you need in this current working directory? You need in some another directory? You need tracing in the shared directory? So stop options will allow you to set the path of the tracing. So let me show you. Again, I will say new tracing. Then I will use stop options. Stop options. Then I will set the path. So this path will tell you where exactly you need to store the tracing. So say paths dot get. See guys, if you're not getting auto suggestion, I have already made a video how to enable auto suggestions, so that you don't need to do control space every time you type. It will give you auto suggestion. Use the respective class or interface and start. So I'm saying once you stop, set the path where I want to set. Let's say I want to store in the current working directory. So current project root directory, let's say. So I will say tracing, and it's always a zip file. So just say zip. That's all. 2 lines of code. I will be sharing this piece of code in the comment box or in the description. You can directly copy paste. Now once it is done, now let me execute this and let me show you how to see this tracing feature. Okay. It's a very small test. Again, doesn't matter whether you have a small test or bigger test, it was going to capture each and every detail. Since there's no failure, it got the test case is passed. Now since we have given tracing.zip, I have not given any path, so by default it will go back to my project root directory. You can see the zip file, right? Now how to open this trace? Now there are 2 options. One option is they have directly given one GUI. Okay, it's a separate web application, trace.playwright.dev. Here you can upload the tracing which you want to see, or you can simply drag and drop. To get the path of this tracing, I will right click on the project. I will go to properties. So this is the path. I can directly navigate to this path, or in Eclipse we have this option. So this is the project Playwright Java. I will open this and we have this tracing file. So I can go back here and I can drag and drop this to this particular application, which is trace.playwright.dev. Now you can see this is a complete blank. It's not showing anything actions before after, because I did a very small mistake. I will show you what I did. So if you go back to the code, what I used this context, right? And we enable the tracing for this context, but I have not used this context to create a new page. I was using browser. So what you need to do, use this context and make sure you are creating page from the context that you created. So only one small change that you need to do. And now let me execute again. Test. It will take hardly few seconds to execute. So it executed. Yeah. And now since we are not giving a new zip file, right? So it will overwrite the previous zip file. So this trace.zip file that we captured, this is the new one. So again, I will go back here. I will drag and drop to this particular application. And now you can see we got the complete detail. So I will give you a little bit background about this Traceviewer, because in order to understand how to analyze, you should know the UI part. So on the top, you can see this is your journey. When I say it started from here within 200 milliseconds, okay, around 800 milliseconds. Yeah, somewhat here within 700 milliseconds, less than 1 second, it loaded the page. Then around 1 second, it entered username, password. and you can see around 1.5 second it was loading. It is actually waiting for the message. Yes, waiting. Now you can see the message appears. So the test that we have written is actually waiting for the welcome message. You can see the welcome message. After welcome message, what it did, it actually clicked on the side menu. Now it clicked on sign out, and after sign out it came to the main page, right? And after main page, again we are verifying the sign in, and it has given me the complete journey. So you can see it's a very interesting feature. You can actually see how much time it took to load your web page, the elements, what actions it has done. So overall it took 4.2 seconds for this execution. On top you can see we have a toggle icon. If you don't like the white theme, you can switch to the dark theme. I generally prefer the dark theme, so I will keep it dark theme. You can extend, okay. This is the extend option, so it will open in the next tab. Now see, this is important part. On the left hand side you will see actions. It has performed all these actions. First created a new page, navigated, title, fill. Now this is fill is basically for type, right? So if I click on this, you can see this is before and after, before, after. And when you click on action, action is basically type, so it's not highlighting, it's highlighting the complete box, but what is getting typed, it will show you after, before, after. Same thing for this. When I go for password, it is saying before it was this, after it was this. Now this is for click. This is interesting. The moment I click on this, it says it clicked on this, before this, after clicking, and what action it has performed. If you click on action, it will show you with a red circle that it has clicked. Then we are waiting for this message. You can see this welcome message. Again click, click, and click. It's not click, it's actually we are verifying the sign in. So this is a very interesting before, after, and what activity it has performed. Coming back to, suppose I want to see this particular step. So this is the call, fill, wait time, total duration, strict to what locator you have used, what values you have used. Coming back to log, this is interesting. So what happens in Playwright, in order to click, it do some actionability criteria, right? When I say actionability criteria, it should be visible, it should be enabled, it should be properly in a viewport. If required, it will scroll. So everything it will show you here. That first of all, it was waiting for this particular element, locator resolved, then it filled, it was attempting fill action, and it was waiting for visible, enable, and editable. So once it is done, then it's performing all the activities. Coming back to errors, we don't have any errors. So this is a console output. So not any related to error, but one of the console we got. Now this is something very interesting. Network calls. Because every time you perform operation, you click, it goes to a server, then you will get the response. Everything that is happening, it's happening through request or response, right? So it's showing you that all these get calls has been done. These are the status, content type, duration, size, start. So if I scroll down, at each step, if you notice what network calls are happening, it is recording everything. Let's say I want to see for this one. So you can see it is highlighting this part, and these are the network calls which is happening. You can also see this option, right? So if I want completely in a bigger screen, I can expand and I can shrink. So all these options are available, and right now what we are doing, we're directly using their own application, trace.playwright.dev. Now let's say I want to open this Traceviewer using Maven command. So if you go to their official website, so opening a trace, they have given this website which I already told you. The second part is this command. You can execute this command. So I will copy this, but in order to execute this, make sure you're under your project root directory. What I mean, if I go back to my project, again right click, properties, you can see this is my project root directory. So I will copy this path and I will open terminal. If you're using Windows, you will open command prompt, and let me increase the size so that you can see what is happening here. So after this command, now we are in the Playwright Java project. Now I can copy this command that we use. So you can copy this and execute. Now make sure you give the exactly same trace file name. What I mean is, right now my zip file name is trace.zip, but let's say if you have given any other name, let's say tracing object or tracing framework, tracing test, so whatever trace file name you have given, make sure you use that. In our case it's tracing.zip only, and it's with capital T. So let me change this to capital T. The moment I execute this, you can see it's executing. Okay, it says trace.zip does not exist. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. It should be tracing. So again, come back. I will say tracing.zip, and yes, now it started the Traceviewer locally. Initially we were using website, right? Now this is a GUI tool which is provided by Playwright, and it will open here. Now you can see the same things. So again, locator, calls, errors, logs, console, network, everything. So that is another way to open Traceviewer locally. So right now what I showed you is a happy scenario. Happy scenario means everything is working fine, my test executed successfully. Let me tell you, if your test fails, how you are going to debug it, because that is where the main tracing feature will come, right? You want to see what went wrong with your test. So what I will do purposefully, I will make some changes so that it should fail, and then we will do the tracing again. For example, I want to make some changes here. Enter, or maybe this one. I will say login. I changed the text. Initially it was different. Now I changed. Now one thing that you have to notice, guys, that whenever you're working with tracing, let's say something went wrong at this particular step, and if you're not handling the exception, what happens? It will not execute the remaining part, right? So this tracing, it will not stop and you will not get the tracing. So please remember, whenever you're working with tracing, make sure this particular statement should get executed. So in this case, I will use try catch. I will say try, or I will say try with finally, because eventually I need to execute that piece of code, right? So within the try block, I'm going to keep till here. Control X, Control V, and in the finally, I will keep this piece of code, which is context tracing stop, and then close the page and close the browser. Now notice this context page and browser is not coming in the finally because it is inside this scope, right? So we need to make sure this browser context is before try, and we'll assign null because it's a local variable. So remove this part from here. Same thing we'll do for page. So page is here. I will keep this outside and I will assign null, and I will remove page from here. Same thing we'll do for browser. So this browser is not able to recognize. We'll keep this browser outside and we'll assign to null, and we'll remove browser from here. So yes, no errors. Now let me execute, and to show you that every time it will create a new trace, I will change it to tracing_new, and let me execute. So what will happen, guys, since by default it will wait for 30 seconds. So obviously it will not be able to find login button. So it will wait 30 seconds. It will keep on retrying. So execute once again with test_ng test. And yes, started. It entered username password. Now it is waiting for that login button. So it will wait for 30 seconds. I will pause the recording and I will show you once it will fail. Okay, so now the test has been failed. What we will do, we will quickly check. First of all, it says timeout error as expected because it's a wrong locator, obviously. So waiting for this, waited for 30 seconds, and you're getting everything here. But now I want to see what got captured in the tracing. So if I refresh my project, you can see I got tracing_new. So again, I will open here and remove everything. go back to the project, and this time tracing underscore new zip I will open. And now you can see, first of all, it is okay. Let me change the theme. It's highlighted in a red color that this particular step has some issue. If you go to logs, it says waiting for get by text login, because obviously we have given wrong, so it was waiting. If you click on error, now you will see that this particular step, get by text, is not able to locate. Timeout exceeded means waited till 30 seconds and then it could not find, and this is where you can easily find now. So it started with this navigated, title, fill, and for this particular step, no actions. So it started waiting from 2 seconds till 30 seconds it has waited, and after that it closed the browser. So very interesting feature. I would highly recommend you to please enable this, and moving forward, once you create framework, you can enable this as a flag. For example, you create a configuration file. By default you keep it off so that you don't need the tracing again and again. But let's say you're running on CI, your test is getting failed, you can enable this tracing from the property file or configuration file so that you can get the tracing. Now before we end this video, I want to also highlight that in case if you have tracing on remote, I will say shared repository, then you can give the path which is accessible. So suppose your zip file is available on a CI server, get the location of that zip file, make sure it is accessible to everyone so that you can use here. So please check out this remote viewing remote access traces. Right now I don't have CI setup, but once you have CI, you can use this viewing remote traces as well. Yeah, so that's all about this video. I hope you enjoyed and got some new from this video. If this video helped you, then please do support this channel, share this video with your friends, colleagues who are learning Playwright. And if you need more videos on Playwright, help me in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care.